Hello, and welcome to another program in which I'm talking about marriage issues. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the rewards for the hard work that you've done. 2 weeks ago, we talked about emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy is a reward for getting unresolved emotional pain resolved, healed, and you becoming more the person God created you to be. God didn't create us to have all these problems, especially in marriage. And I think 2 weeks ago, you were able to see that a great reward is for emotional intimacy. And so today, I'm going to be talking specifically about 4 areas that really are problems for marriage. I've talked about them before in past weeks, and they are the problem that comes with codependency, the problem that comes with emotional immaturity, the problem that comes with triggers, and the problems that come with lack of attachment. Each one of those areas is a specific problem for a marriage. And it's a specific problem for all relationships, but we're concentrating on marriage, and that's really important. So I'm excited today to talk about more rewards for emotional healing, Part 1. And then next week, I'm going to talk to you about more rewards for emotional healing, Part 2. And the way I'm going to do this today is I'm going to actually read from a transcription that I had from regarding codependency, and I want you to listen carefully, and probably you're going to want to take notes. And then after the codependency, we'll talk about emotional immaturity, because those areas, those 2 problem areas, really affect marriages, and we don't want that. But before I do, let me just remind you that this book is the book that I wrote. It's called The Key. It is the key for emotional healing. It's the key for being able to understand what happened to you as a child, because everything that happened to you as a child is being relived today. And Satan has caused parents to bring emotional pain to children through abuse, through neglect, through emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and God forbid, sexual abuse, and also being unemotionally available. So this book addresses that. And you can get this book on Amazon. You can also go to relationshipsrevealed.org, and there you can order the book, but you can also find out about what Relationships Revealed is all about in the 7 books I'm writing, and the one I'm concentrating on now is the marriage book. And so you'll be able to read about that. And then I have a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is Relationships Revealed by Pastor Frank Lewis. You can go to that. I think there's 16 videos, maybe 17 on there now, of the videos that I've done. And you may want to go back and listen to the one on codependency, listen to the one on emotional immaturity, listen to the one on triggers, or the one on lack of attachment. Because when you do, you're going to realize it's a big problem in your marriage. It was a big problem in my marriage. And we want to now talk about there are great rewards for being healed of unresolved emotional pain. And I want to specifically talk to you right now about the rewards that are available that come with emotional healing in the area of codependency. So I'm going to read some of this transcription, and if you have looked at that after you realize that this is available for codependency, it's a problem, you can look at that video, then you'll be really caught up here. Satan is the god of this world. He uses parents most often unknowingly. They're used unknowingly. They don't know what they're doing because nobody's taught them. My next book, by the way, will be about how to raise children. It's called The Parent's Playbook. So we'll be getting into that in weeks ahead as we continue giving wisdom, downloads, and revelation that God's given me about relationships. So unknowingly, parents bring pain to their children and they leave them with unresolved emotional wounds. This happens to everybody in the human race. It's not just Christians, by the way, because Satan doesn't know who's going to become a Christian or who isn't. And these wounds go unresolved because people don't even realize that they have them. Many times, most of the time, a lot of the time, they're below conscious thought. They're in the subconscious mind. And so when they're below subconscious thought, you can't know that you have unresolved emotional pain. And so it's like a beach ball. You're trying to hold this beach ball under the water as you're sitting on it, and as soon as you let go of the side, it's going to flip you. Well, the emotional pain is there, and it's like trying to hold a beach ball and sit on it and remain upright, and you're just not going to be able to do it. Now, what the problem is when emotional pain is created by parents, again, and it happens with their children, what happens is the pain creates a way to look at this wound is a hole in the soul. And every single person that has a hole in their soul is looking for a solution to the pain that's coming from their hole in their soul. And so that's something that they're looking for, but they're looking for it with all the wrong people. They're looking for it with all the wrong solutions. Drug, sex, alcohol won't fill the hole in the soul. Money won't fill the hole in the soul. Power won't fill the hole. Nothing will fill the hole in the soul. But God can, and His people can, when it's structured properly. And I did a whole video on reparenting, and you can go look at that. So when someone marries in neediness, hoping that their spouse will fill their hole in the soul, that's going to cause a very serious problem. That's going to cause a very serious problem because an adult of the opposite sex cannot heal the childhood wound of another person. It's just a rule. You just have to know that. Your husband, your wife cannot heal or cannot love you enough to fill that hole in your soul. But when you get healed, then you will end up in a situation where you will actually not be one down. A needy spouse will go one down, and the controlling spouse will be one up. Well, that's not how God planned it. And usually it's role reversal, where women are controlling men. Sometimes it happens to be that angry men are controlling women, but that's not the way God designed it. When you're healed, you're going to have a 50-50 marriage. And it's going to be great. It's going to be delightful, because that's what God created us for, is equality in marriage, in relationships, equality. But you can't get there unless you've had the healing. So if we don't get the healing, there's a cycle of unmet needs. Needs are not met. Disappointment comes. Resentment comes by the spouse that's one down. Well, we don't want that. So healing puts a person in a place where they will not be one down. They will be equal to their spouse. And that is what happens at the adult level of emotional maturity, which I'm going to talk about emotional immaturity in the next section. So it means that a person who gets healed can be their true, authentic self. I remember when I was married to my wife, I walked on eggshells at a certain time in our marriage because my wife got angry. She had never touched into anger before, but she was very angry. And guess who she was angry at? Me. She was angry at me. That may be happening to you. You may have a spouse that's angry with you. Well, it may not even be you. It's probably them. And in most cases, you probably haven't done anything to deserve it. So that's what happens when you're not emotionally healed. So neediness and the hole in the soul will cause marriage problems that are very, very difficult. Now, if you can't heal from these childhood wounds properly, then what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to give and receive properly. See, that's where equality works really well, because an emotional adult gives and receives in balance. Well, if you haven't been healed emotionally, you're going to give too much or you're going to take too much. It's just the way it works. You're going to give too much, you're going to take too much. You may have a husband that takes too much. You may have a wife that gives too much. You may be a taker, you may be a giver. Emotional healing will solve the problem of not being able to be in balance in giving and receiving. It's very, very important to have that balance. We don't want roles switching, but sometimes they will. When a person is emotionally healed in a 50-50 relationship, the wife may be one up for doing the bills, the husband goes one down, but there's still equality. They're still not going to take advantage of each other. See, a needy spouse is going to be taken advantage of. So that's the specific reward, because you're not codependent. What is codependency? Codependency is where the one spouse will look to the other spouse to meet their emotional needs. Well, a spouse, I already told you, can't do that. But if I look to someone else to meet my emotional needs, then I'm needy, and I'm going to be taken advantage of in one way or another. And I've asked many women, do you want to be a mother to your husband? Not one of them has ever agreed that that's a good plan. And I don't want you to think it's a good plan, because it's not. It's not God's best. It's not God's way of having a marriage. And so it's very, very important to realize that emotional healing brings a place where you can actually go one up or one down, but still stay equal. It's very, very important. If you don't have the emotional healing, then the unhealthy spouse will try to manipulate, try to control, try to cause the other spouse to give them the love they never received as a child. Fill up that hole in my soul. And if they don't, they could get angry. They could they could withdraw. But it is not healthy. It's not good for a marriage to have a spouse that's trying to get the other spouse to, by manipulation and control and all this. It just doesn't work. So that's one of the rewards. You get to be your true, authentic self and ask for your needs to be met, and be able to look that way for that. One of the things I just mentioned was that if you're out of balance, you can give too much. My wife absolutely gave too much. She gave all the time, but she couldn't take care of herself, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes here. So I had a big hole in my soul until I got emotionally well and emotionally healed. And I looked for my wife and others to fill that gaping hole in my soul. And it just wouldn't work. It didn't work. I tried to make a lot of money, live in the right house, drive the right car, wear the right watch. I'm not wearing that kind of watch now. And so, because I don't need to. And so I'm more emotionally whole and have a very, very satisfying and wonderful life. And so, you need to be able to realize that in order to have a genuine, loving relationship, you're going to have, because you can't be yourself. Remember, I think it was even last week, maybe not 2 weeks ago, but last week that I talked about this emotional intimacy. It's what everybody wants. It's the name of the book. The name of the book is What Women Need and Men Want. Everybody wants emotional intimacy. They don't know what it is. I defined it last week, but they don't know what it is. So they don't know how to get it. Well, I've given you a goal, a reason to do the emotional healing work so you can have emotional intimacy. And that's going to bring you into a place where you will absolutely have a better marriage, and it's really going to be good. So, emotionally needy spouse is actually attracted to a rescuing spouse or to a controlling spouse. And that's why they get taken advantage of. That's why they get resentful. And so emotional healing solves that problem. And so we want to be emotionally healed. And so we want to look at, for a minute, Adam and Eve. Look at Adam and Eve. Before the fall, they were naked and they weren't ashamed. Before the fall, they couldn't hurt each other. Before the fall, they were equal. Before the fall, they were fully known. After the fall, they were naked and ashamed, and they had fear, and they hid. Well, you may have a spouse that's hiding. Hiding, you say? Yes, hiding behind a facade and a mask. And you don't want to be hiding behind a facade and a mask if you're in a marriage, because then you can't be known. If you can't be known, you can't have emotional intimacy. You can't have a great marriage with a spouse or two spouses that are not their true, authentic selves. You can't have a great marriage if one of the spouses is hiding. That's just not going to work. Hiding because they are emotionally wounded. So you do the emotional healing work, and then you get to take off the mask and be more like Adam and Eve were before they disobeyed God. And that's a good thing for us to look at. Shame says we're defective. Well, we don't want to be defective in a marriage because we're going to be hiding. We're going to be blaming. Remember, Adam blamed Eve. He told God, you made the woman. He blamed Eve. And Eve blamed the serpent. Everybody these two were blaming. Why were they blaming? Because they were shame-based. They had shame. And they were afraid. They lived in fear. Well, if you live in fear and you have shame, you're going to blame. And I don't think you want blame in a marriage. You don't want to be blamed, do you? I didn't want to be blamed. I was. It was pretty hard. I didn't like it a lot. It didn't work for me. And so you're not going to really like your marriage if you are going to blame each other. It's not going to work well. So you're going to have a heaven on earth marriage if you will do the emotional work that I've talked to you about. This is the great reward. Specifically, you're not going to be a codependent anymore. You're not going to look to your wife or your husband to fill the hole in your soul. You're not going to be one down and taken advantage of and then get resentful, disappointed, hiding. You're not going to be hiding. You're not going to need to hide. You can be your true, authentic self. You can be vulnerable, open, transparent, like we talked about last week, which brings emotional intimacy. So that is the specific reward for doing the emotional healing work in regards to not needing to be codependent. Now we're going to look at the second one, which is emotional immaturity. If you have a spouse that is emotionally immature, or you are a spouse that's emotionally immature, and you're married to an emotionally immature spouse, it's not going to go well. It's going to go very, very badly. So what is emotional immaturity? Emotional immaturity is a place that people find themselves because of the emotional wounds, the emotional pain that has not been resolved in childhood that came as a result of fathers and mothers bringing pain to their children. what does it cause? It causes the development of the child to not go. It's arrested development. It doesn't go the way that it's supposed to go. And so there's 3 different categories that I looked at when we talked about emotional maturity. And the first one is infant, the second one is child, and the third one is adult. We're not going to talk too much about the adult today. We're going to talk about the infant and the child level of emotional maturity, because when you do your emotional healing work, it will lead you through each of the infant level and the child level. Needs and tasks will get done so you can be at the emotional adult level. And that's where you have a marriage made in heaven here on earth. So what happens? What happens to a child becomes an adult that you married or I married, and they are stuck at the infant level of emotional maturity? Now, so that you know, I was the infant. I was the infant. I was the one who really was the taker. I was the one who expected my wife to be my nurturing mother. Ooh, just hard for me to even say today because I've done so much work. But if you are an emotional infant, and by the way, the experts say that 60 to 70 to 80% of the men in the United States are at the infant level of emotional maturity. Well, that is because they didn't get the love they needed. They didn't get the bonding they needed. They got wounded. They got emotionally wounded, and that caused them to stay stuck at the infant level of emotional maturity. What happens at the infant level? Well, the baby, as you recall, cries. Well, I know so many men, because I do men's groups. I know so many men that are not able to even ask other men to help them to do something. They feel like they're not valuable. They feel that they don't ask because they're not valuable. They don't ask because they don't feel worthy. They don't ask because someone could say no. Well, what do you think happens with God? They can't ask, or they ask in the wrong way. They feel guilty when they ask. And so people, men or women that are stuck at the infant level of emotional maturity, have problems asking. They also have problems with triggering. Triggering comes because of things that happened that causes that emotional pain, causes false beliefs to happen, and false beliefs are beliefs that are triggered when something remotely similar happens in the present that happened in the past. Well, you don't want that. You don't want to have that happening, because emotional triggers, emotional upset will cause relationship ruptures. There's a lot of people that are divorced, a lot of people that are separated, a lot of people having difficulties in marriage because of triggers. The problem with the triggers that I'm going to talk about in the next week is that you don't know where they come from. They just come out of the blue. You don't know where they come from. But the other side of this is that if you grew up too fast, like my wife did, and had too much responsibility, then you may be a pseudo-mature. You may be a pseudo-mature child trying to take care of everything. My wife was a giver. She gave too much. She couldn't take care of herself. And pseudo-mature people that have skipped infancy and child level tasks and needs were not met. They just skipped them. They are the people that you might marry. I did. I married a lady who couldn't take care of herself. I married a lady that was responsible for everyone else. In fact, she played God. She acted like she was God. And you may be having that same situation in your marriage. Oftentimes, a pseudo-mature woman will marry an infant man, thinking that she can love him enough to come up to her level. Then they could be equal. Not happening. It never will happen, but they think that. And so a pseudo-mature child is at the level where they have to go back, because behavioral scientists and developmental psychologists tell us we can't skip. So a pseudo-mature child has to go back to infancy, learn how to ask, learn how to get their infant needs met and their childhood needs met. A pseudo-mature adult who marries is a woman or a man that can't take care of themselves. They give too much. Now, why do they give too much? Because they believe that if they give, that they'll get eventually loved. But they always end up with people that can't love them. And so they're giving, trying to get loved, the love they never got as a child, trying to get that hole in the soul filled up, but it can't happen. And so when there is a pseudo-mature child and that child has now gone back to infancy, gone back to childhood, because they've gotten a more emotional healing, guess what? They're going to learn to take care of themselves. They're going to learn to give and receive. The problem with a pseudo-mature child is they can't receive. They just are not good at receiving. And you've got to be good at receiving and giving, and it has to be in balance because that's what adults do at the adult level of emotional maturity. And so this is the problem. But the solution is getting emotionally healed so that you're not a pseudo-mature child and you're not a codependent. It's so vitally important to not be a pseudo-mature child in a marriage relationship. And that is vitally important. If you want a marriage that's made in heaven, right here on earth, you're going to have to be doing your emotional healing work. But there's great rewards. Great rewards because you get to be your true authentic self, you get to be vulnerable, transparent, honest, and you get to trust. See, these two different problem areas that I've just talked to you about, there's not trust of the spouse. There's not trust of and love of self. And so how can you love another? So what we're looking at is the two things today that can keep you from emotional intimacy and having a great marriage. God is good. He's good all the time, and He's going to show you how to be able to get healed. And you can go back and look at the videos on healing that I've talked to you about, and you can have a great marriage right here on earth as it is in heaven. That's good for you.